Okay, this is your notes for the point slope form of a line. Point slope looks like this. This is what the point slope form looks like. It's y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Remember, m is my slope, and the x1, y1 is just any point on the line. Any point on the line is my x1, y1. So an example would look like this. You might have y minus 7 equals negative 2 times x minus 3, right? And in that equation, my slope is negative 2 and my point is 3, 7. That's my x and my y, my x1, y1. The x and the y notice stay there, and I substitute in the point for my x1 and my y1. Okay, but just as a really quick review, let's talk about the three forms of a line that we have talked about. We have standard form first, which was ax plus by equals c. Remember, we said some criteria we had to meet for that one. A had to be greater than or equal to 0. Basically, A can't be negative. Remember, A and B both can't be 0. One can, but they both can't. And remember, my GCF of A, B, and C has to be 1. And if you'll remember in class one day, we really didn't talk about this. It went on your criteria sheet, but it needs to be. I should have put it on there. But we talked about basically too that A can't be a fraction. So let's add that. A can't be a fraction. Okay, if it's a fraction, we got to get it out of there. All right, that's standard form. Then we had slope-intercept form, which is probably all of our favorites. It's the easiest, right? We liked that one, where y equals mx plus b. And then we had, well, backing up, m is our slope, and b was our y-intercept. Remember that. And then today we starting to talk about point slope form, which looks like y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Again, m is my slope. X1 and Y1 are any point on the line. So those are your three forms of a line that you're going to need to know. You might as well just go ahead and get them memorized because you got to know when we're going to be moving around back and forth between all the different forms. All right, so let's start with just a real basic example. It says write an equation in point slope form. So I know point slope form is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1 for the line that passes through negative 2, 0 with a slope of negative 3 halves. So plugging in what I know, this would be my x1, my y1. So I'm just going to have y minus 0 equals negative 3 halves x minus a negative 2. So what have I got? Y minus 0 is just y equals negative 3 halves x minus a negative is really plus 2. Do I have to go on and do my distributive property and all that? No, because it told me to write it in point slope form, and that is point slope form. Okay? I just didn't have my y minus anything because it was minus 0. If you want to put the y minus 0 on there, that's fine, although you really don't need it because what is y minus 0 is just y. Now we're going to be doing some also when we're moving around from one form to another. Let's say I gave you this equation. I said y equals 3/4 x minus 5. What form is that now? Right now, that is in what? Slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. I want you to write that for me in standard form. All right, remember what standard form looks like. ax plus by equals c. So in standard form, I got to have my x and my y on the same side of the line. So I have y equals 3/4 x minus 5. Now, there's several ways to go about this problem. I know my x, remember my criteria where my x had to be positive. So you could start out by subtracting 3/4 x, but that's just making my x negative. So I think if it were me and I was working this problem, I would try to keep my x positive. So what I might first do is add 5 to both sides. So then I have y plus 5 equals 3/4 x, because those cancel each other out. Now I've got to get my x and my y on the same side, so we could subtract y from both sides. So 5 is equal to 3/4 x minus y. So am I in standard form yet? No, not yet. I've got my x and the y on the same side, but remember, what did I tell you? We can't have that fraction on our x. So what can I do to get rid of that fraction? Well, look at your denominator. It is a 4. So if I come up here and I multiply everything by 4, if I multiply on my right-hand side by 4, I got to multiply my left-hand side by 4. So I have 20 is equal to, doing my distributive property, 3/4 times 4. Come over here on the side if you don't see that. Those cancel out. That's just going to be what? 3x minus 4y. Now am I in standard form? Well, have I met all my criteria? Is A positive? Yes. Is A a fraction? No. So I'm okay there. Are A and X both 0? No. They're 3 and -4, so I'm okay there. My GCF of my A, B, and C is 1. There's nothing else that will go into 20, 3, and -4 or 4. So I am in standard form. Now, does it matter that I have it written on opposite sides? No. If you want to write that as 3x minus 4y equals 20, that's the exact same thing. It doesn't matter. Whatever way you're most comfortable with. Okay? Now, let's look at another one. What if I gave you this equation? Y minus 5 equals 4/3 times x minus 3. What form is that in now? That's in my point slope form. Okay? And I want you to write that for me in slope intercept form. All right, what does slope intercept form look like? Y equals mx plus b. So, looking at this equation, what am I going to have to do? Well, somehow or another, I'm going to get y by itself. But before I can do any of that, I need to do something with this distributive property. And again, you've got a couple of routes that you can take here. Same ways of doing the same problem. I think it might be easier if I do the distributive property. You could start right here, multiply both sides by 3 and get rid of that fraction, but let's just do it this way. Y minus 5 equals 4/3 x, and then if I have 4/3 times 3, that's just going to be what? Minus 4. Now what am I going to do? I've got to get to slope-intercept form of this line. So I've got to get the y by itself. So let's just add 5. Always look at what you're trying to get to. So y equals 4/3 x plus 1. Am I in slope-intercept form? Yes. So I am done. Y equals 4/3 x plus 1. Okay, so you really got to know those 3 forms of a line. Let's try one, and we're going to write one equation, same equation, written 3 different ways. Okay, so if I gave you this equation, I said y plus 7 equals -5 times x plus 3. What form is that? That's my point slope form. Now, what if I want you to write that in standard form? Remember, standard form is ax plus by equals c. So starting out, I've got y plus 7 equals, I'm going to go ahead and do my distributive property, negative 5x minus 15. Standard form, I want my x and my y on the same side. But remember, this is the one I have all those criteria for. I got to have my x be positive. I've got to have it not be a fraction. So right now it's a negative. So I'm going to go ahead and just add 5x to both sides. You know, last time I didn't want to move it because it was positive, but now it's negative. So why not just go ahead and move that? So I've got 5x plus y plus 7 equals a negative 15. Now, standard form, I got to have my x and my y on one side by themselves. So I'm going to have what? 5x plus y equals negative 22. Am I in standard form? Yes. Does it meet all my criteria? Yes. Is a greater than 0? Yes. It's 5. Is a fraction? No, it's 5. Are a and b both 0? No. Is there a GCF greater than 1? No. So I am in standard form. Now we also could write that same equation in slope-intercept form. Remember what slope-intercept form looks like. Y equals mx plus b. Now I can take it from, I can start in point-slope form and go to standard form, or I can start, point-slope form to go to the slope-intercept form, or I can go from standard form to slope-intercept form. I think it's going to be easier for me just to take this one in standard form and write it in slope-intercept form, because all I want to do is get the y by itself. So I'm just going to subtract 5x from both sides. So y is equal to a negative 5x minus 22. Am I in slope-intercept form? Yes. So all three of these equations are the exact same line if I were to graph them. Okay? It's the exact same equation, just written 3 different ways. The big thing to remember today is your 3 forms of a line. Standard form, ax plus by equals c. Slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. Okay, remember, m is the slope, b is the y-intercept. Point-slope form, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. M is the slope. X1, Y1 is any point on the line. Okay? 3 forms of a line. Write them down. Memorize them over and over and over. You got to know those. All right, have a great night. I will see you tomorrow. But most importantly, remember what? Jesus loves you.